Hello, wonderful viewer. Welcome back to KSP to Mars. I'm Lorenzo, and this is episode 47, where once again we try to go to the moon and not crash. The former has happened twice in a row already, but today, again, as always, I'm confident. Yesterday, the problem was it was a lack of delta V, and we are trying to land a reusable, I call it a suborbital lobber, that has about 2.5 kilometers per second of delta V and is refuelable on the lunar surface. Now, the caveat of this is that it has horrible specific impulse and not wonderful properties. So it's a really bad rocket to put, a really bad stage to put on the top of your rocket if you want delta V, and of course we do want delta V. What I didn't consider yesterday, and it has been a fairly simple design revision, as you can see it's almost completely the same, is that of course there is no actual need to launch this full. So I'm launching it almost empty. If we look at the engineer here, the final stage, this is the aluminum hybrid rocket, will now just have 784 meters per second of delta V. This is of course not enough to do anything with, so we're going to do all but the very last maneuvers on the nuclear stage before that, which has been appropriately beefed up with a half extra fuel tank, upping the delta V of the rocket as a whole by about 1.5 to 2 kilometers per second. And if you remember, yesterday we were short about 300 meters per second. Now, using a nuclear engine for setting a descent course that leaves us 700 meters per second short of actually landing is challenging, because this of course will have a low thrust to weight ratio. Therefore, I expect we will need more than the 300 meters per second extra, but fortunately we did bring that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this in a similar fashion as yesterday, and because if you want to see the progression of that mission, you can just check yesterday's episode. I will not in fact be showing this procedure. Expect me back with a approach trajectory to the moon, and there we will see if this configuration of vessel has what it takes to actually successfully land. And if so, we will then be hopping around the moon, picking up Kerbals, doing science, and make... Alright, and there we are, in a very tight orbit around the moon. Let's have a look here at the display. The orbit is 14 kilometers by 51, and we're currently approaching the 14 end, or otherwise known as the periapsis. We are, currently traveling on the day side of the moon, which is of course good for a nice and visible landing. And on the way here in the transit and during the burns, I was thinking that it might be best to restrict this lander to the equatorial regions of the moon, just to be sure that this power receiver will, at least every once in a while, be pointed at the Earth where it can receive power and actually drill for aluminium. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, and now I'm going to slow down. We have 1668 meters per second of speed relative to the surface, and I'm happy to announce that our vessel has 3.5 kilometers per second of delta V left. So copious amounts of delta V to slow down with, which I am going to do indeed right now. The caveat, of course, is that we have to do it with the nuclear engine, which means that that burn will take a rather long while. And we are, as we speak, plummeting towards the surface, but we are doing so in a rather shallow arc. So I'm going to keep going to keep an eye on the surface tab here, which will list my altitude over the terrain as 24 kilometers, as well as my vertical speed, two very important numbers. Of course, also the impact, well, not so much the impact altitude, but the time until, well, let's not call it impact, but featherly soft touchdown. That's a much nicer name, if you do ask me. This will take a few minutes, so I'll check back with you when we are a lot closer to the surface and we are ditching this transfer stage, whereupon we will prepare to land on the aluminum-powered rocket, which of course has only 784 meters per second of delta V, because it's not quite full. Right. Quick intermezzo here. This is what landing on a nuclear engine looks like. Scrubbing horizontal velocity a little bit while trying to not crash into the ground. can see here the vertical speed is it was at minus 100 meters per second, and that was getting me a little bit worried because our horizontal speed is still about a kilometer per second. So I'm currently working to gain a little bit more altitude. Very, very wasteful on the delta V, of course, but fortunately we have enough of that. We have 2 kilometers per second left in the nuclear stage, so we're wasting heaps and tons of it to, well, not crash, which is, I think you'll agree, a lofty goal. In regards of the beamed power, I'm not quite happy to report that we do have a relay for that available. Look at that, it's here almost in the perfect position. We have the Earth here, the relay here, and we in the Moon, just ever so much inclined dip down between these relays. So whether we're on the side facing Earth or not, we will have access to beamed power, which is wonderful, of course. And this relay will also help should we choose to go for the higher or lower latitudes on the Moon. That of course will mean that sometimes we will have to wait for about a month before the relay will get any power. At least the coverage on the Moon should not be anywhere near 100%, but a month is relatively short, and that's the time the Moon takes to do one orbit of the Earth, of course. And well, in that time, I think every bit of surface of the Moon, maybe excepting the absolute poles, every bit of surface should get some power coverage. So this lander, hopper, lobber thing should be able to refuel just about anywhere on the Moon, which is of course the point. Yeah, 900 meters per second of horizontal speed left to cancel, so I will go set about doing that and check back with you a little bit later. And here we are back once more, approaching the surface. Approaching in such a way that our vertical speed is more or less constant at 30 meters per second, just a little bit under highway speed. And here our impact time is roughly staying constant. That means that the surface is actually receding under us, must be, because we're going down. Oh no, our vertical speed is decreasing, that's why that impact estimation time is staying more or less constant. Anyway, that's not the most interesting thing by far. We are touching down finally, and it looks as though we're going to be successful. The nuclear stage has still more than a kilometer per second of delta V left, and we here have 200 meters per second of speed relative to the surface. So all in all, everything should be going well. We have 4.8 kilometers of altitude, and well, this should not be a problem. We should probably even be able to touch down on the nuclear engine, so that is what I am going to do. Well, almost, of course, because this is not really a stable landing base, but I am going to use it to get very close to the surface, then ditch it and land on the aluminum hybrid rocket. It has only 700 meters per second of delta V, but that should be plenty to, you know, cushion a landing from a few hundred meters up. I am wary of launching it at full throttle. That's enough to shoot this up in the air at several Gs, so I'm going to have to cut this engine, then separate, and then slowly throttle up. So that's what I wanted a few hundred meters of leeway for. Now it's time to start, well, not throttling down, but pitching over some more. Our vertical speed has almost been killed. That was not my intention, but well, it happened while talking, and well, you may know that does diminish the concentration and ability of pilots somewhat. At least it does for me. So here we are coming to a full stop in the middle of the, well, I keep calling it the air, but you know, of course, no air on the Moon. So what do we call this? Space near the Moon. I'm just going to call it up in the air near the Moon anyway. That's what we humans are comfortable with, so that's what I'm sticking with. Damn it. We have 20 meters per second of surface relative speed and about 19 meters of vertical speed, so that means that we are pretty much directly over the surface. Oh, of course we are directly over the surface, but I mean we have almost no horizontal velocity left, and that's a good thing. Because we have so much fuel, I'm just going to try and slow down to 10 meters per second relative. Well, let's make that 15, else this is going to take forever. 15 meters per second of a vertical speed, and to try and keep that constant at that rate. Then, once it's time to ditch this engine, I'm going to throttle up, zero this out, or maybe even give it a slight hint of positive speed, and then come down on the aluminum rocket, obviously. And I do have to keep my eye on the throttles, because otherwise I am just going to shoot up in the air again. There we go, up in the air. Of course, not really air. Just saw the latest Top Gear episode, and boy, that was a blast. They had some fun cars in that. Pretty good. If there was some pilots in here, I'd say, like, they're talking about cars while landing on the moon, but, well, it's all roboticized, so I don't know what computers think. I really, really don't. Now, again, while talking, the vertical speed has climbed up to 30 meters per second, so I'm going to shut up for just a little bit and perform this landing, taking care, of course, not to have it fail. So I will leave you with the side of that, and I'll shut up now. Well, that appeared to go well. Now we're left with this aluminum rocket where the slightest hint of throttle will, well, basically stop it dead. It has a killer thrust to weight ratio here, which is of course good for landing, but one of the hazards, a little known hazard in rocket science, one of the hazards of a high thrust to weight ratio is that you end up changing the throttle a lot, and if you happen to use a shift key for that, you can get sticky keys. And I'm well aware of the possibility of that happening, as you might know, so I'm using continuous presses of shift alternated by an X key to cut the engines. And look at that, we brought lights, so for once we're landing in a bright blaze of glory, and well, everything looks as though it might be going fine, although I've been saying that a lot. So 1 meter per second, that should be a safe speed. There we go. And yeah, I think I can declare we have landed. Wonderful. There's no Kerbals here to rejoice, obviously, but I do have a science package. This can do a gravity scan from the highland craters on the ground. Wow, and we can still transmit that. Wonderful. Transmit that home. We even get some science this run. What about that? That's wonderful. Temperature data. Wow. It's not the most science we've ever had, but science is science, and of course I'm happy with that. Now, of course, the big question, can we in fact get some resources from this? So let's see first if we do in fact get power when we deploy this. We do, 20 megawatts, not quite a lot, but well, there is power. Of course, heat radiators have to be deployed now because this power is not quite not perfectly efficient, and look at that, it looks like the middle of the heat radiator is perfectly translucent to sunlight. Why not? Anyway, we have 20 megawatts available. Let's see if we can electrolyze aluminum. We have power, 20 megawatts of 40. I hope that means it's just going to happen slower instead of not at all. Let's have a look here. No, that means it's not happening at all. At our current distance, we should be able to receive 40 megawatts if the angle is better. Let's have a look at if we can see what the angle actually is. We are landed here, pointing straight up. That is not pointed at any receiver. Of course, the easiest receiver is this one here, the power relay one. That's basically the same as pointing at Earth. And another receiver we have is this one here, and that's basically the same as pointing away from Earth. We are doing neither, so still we are getting 20 megawatts. I have good hopes that when we rotate a little bit in the orbit, we will in fact get more. So let's time warp and make that happen, see if that actually works out. Does this update while I'm warping? Yes, it does. So let's... No, now it's completely out. Completely out. I'm not sure if this is accurate, because it is happening very haphazardly. Of course, it has to do with the orbit of the relay, not just the moon. So that's probably accurate. Let's time warp forward then. We will have to wait several days, because of course this is the moon we are talking about, and well, that's that with that 30-day rotation relative to the Earth and all that. So let's just stay here on the lander and keep a close look on. Ooh, that's quick. Oh, stop. 80 megawatts. Wonderful. So my hunch guesstimating rocket science method has panned out for once, and that means that we are now, well, we should be electrolyzing alumina. Are you telling me I need a miner as well? I just assumed that if I put this inline refinery, because it's inline, that would be able to get to the alumina that's on the ground here. Apparently it's not. Electrolyze aluminum. Now this is what you get for starting missions without, I don't know, reading on the internet about how everything works, but that's something I don't really want to do. I don't like reading on the internet about how everything works, because then it's just a matter of following a recipe instead of playing a game and exploring space. The payoff, or should I say the payback for that, is of course that now I think this is completely useless. I have the power, I should be able to electrolyze aluminum, and I have 2 units. I have the refinery here, and in the parts tab I have a large in situ refinery that's maybe supposed to sit on the ground. But then if it has to sit on the ground, that's not really that good, is it? Because how the hell am I going to... I can of course design some landing strut that connects to this, but due to the horrible ISP of this aluminum rocket, there's really no way I can bring a whole lot more equipment and still have this usable in any way, shape or form. Yeah, that is a problem. Of course, if this doesn't work, and I think we can safely say it doesn't, then this is completely useless, because there's nothing we can do to refuel this then. So, good landing, but not really anything else. And once again, I'm very happy I didn't bring any Kerbals. Yeah, maybe I have to hit another button. Let's have a look. No, monopropellant, anthraquinone, water, Sabotier. This is ambient CO2 insufficient. Yeah, this doesn't work out. Although this gives me an error. Uranium tetrafluoride are needed, ammonia are needed, monopropellant, ammonia and hydrogen peroxide are needed, anthraquinone, water. Water doesn't give me a message, and I clearly don't have water. Aluminum doesn't give me any message, but doesn't give me any aluminum either. Either I'm misunderstanding this completely. I thought that what this does is it gets regolith from the moon, electrolyzes that into aluminium, and oxidizer. You know, rocket fuel. If you have to bring the oxidizer, then it's completely pointless, because then you're working with a rocket that has 280 seconds of specific impulse, and you have to bring half the fuel. Then it makes much more sense to just bring a nuclear engine and a lot of fuel for it. Yeah, I'm gonna figure out how this works. For now, I'm going to leave this here, and damn it, I was happy with this design. I could hop around the moon and do useful things, but It turns out it can't. I suppose that's it for the lunar exploration adventure of this episode. Next episode, I'm going to have a look at Mars, as the name of this series quite aptly states, I suppose. We've not been to Mars so many times. We're going there manned with a lander, intending on bringing back a surface sample. So that's a big flagship mission. The people stranded on the moon currently, they can tune into their televisions. They should have televisions in their bases. They can tune in their televisions and watch and cheer and hope that the technological advances that Mars mission will bring will someday translate into a vehicle that will, well, rescue them from the moon, I suppose. Anyway, I'm Lorenzo. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.